In this video, we'll see how you can measure your progress in a meditation session using an ancient Buddhist text called Anapanasati Sutta. Now, Anapanasati Sutta, or Mindfulness of Breathing Sutta, explains 16 steps that your meditation experience almost automatically goes through. That explains, that you are progressing. And this happens automatically as you start getting calmer and calmer. So it's almost like a symptom of your mind becoming more and more calm. Now, the beauty of this sutta or these 16 steps is that while these happen to your subjective experience, these are almost objective in the sense that these happen almost to everyone. Whether or not you are using breathing as your mindfulness object or whether you're using another meditative practice that the Buddha taught, it doesn't make a difference. These are simply the symptoms of your mind getting calmer. Now, the goal of our meditation session is to calm your mind down a lot, like so that it becomes super clear and super calm. And then use that calm mind to see reality for how it actually is, which leads to insight. And this insight leads to permanent changes in your mind, which we can call wisdom. And this wisdom finally reduces your stress permanently by a lot, and it makes you happier and calmer and far more compassionate as well. In order to do this, you need to go through all of these 16 steps in a single meditation session. Now, the first 12 steps are related to calming your mind down. So, the 12th step is sort of the culmination of being really calm. But the last four steps are related to seeing reality as it is. So, those are the insight steps. The first 12 are traditionally called Samatha steps or calming meditation steps. The last four are Vipassana or insight meditation steps. And the culmination of these 16 steps, and especially the last four insight stages, is a glimpse into nirvana or moksha, which is complete liberation from stress of any kind, like the perfect peace, the perfect happiness that you can imagine, and complete freedom from all delusions or all fetters of our mind. Now, as a side note, while you eventually need to go through all of these 16 steps in a single sit, as a beginner meditator, you'll probably spend most of your time getting to the highest step that you can in a sit and then waiting until the next day and probably getting to the next step and so on. So, as an example, maybe the very first time or the very first week that you meditate, you only get to step one and spend, let's say, 30 minutes or so in step one and don't really progress automatically beyond that. But after a week of your mind getting used to step one, it is finally able to let go and move to step two. So you'll probably spend that next week getting from step one at the start of your set and then to step two, and then spending the rest of your set until that point. So let's say 30 minutes or so. Then maybe after a few days, you can move on to step three. So that's starting your sit at step one, getting to step two within, let's say, 10 minutes, and then getting to step three within the next 10 minutes and spending the rest of the time that you allotted at step three, and so on. And you keep on doing this until there's a time where you get through all of these 16 steps within a single sit. Now let's see how do we actually progress from step X to step X plus 1. So step 1 to step 2 and so on. Now if you can imagine that your subjective experience is sort of like a 3D space of, let's say, awareness. And that 3D space has some phenomena or objects in it as well. So stuff like sound, stuff like your thoughts, stuff like feelings, and so on. You'll notice that your mind is almost constantly clinging to one of these objects, and this clinging leads to stress. So, the way to become calmer is to progressively let go of clinging to these objects. And it just happens to be the fact that this letting go of these objects happens in a particular form or in a particular order. And that order is from the grossest kinds of these objects or phenomena to the most subtlest kind. Traditionally, these objects are categorized into what we call the five aggregates of clinging to sort of denote the grossest form from the subtlest form. The grossest form of these aggregates is form, which includes the five senses. So, the objects that you see in five senses, like sound or tactile or touch sensations, and also your sort of inner feeling of having a body. So, the sense of having legs, the sense of having hands and arms and a stomach. Now, just to clarify, even though during the start of your sit, you'll mostly be dealing with letting go of clinging to the most grossest forms of these aggregates, moving on to subtler forms later during your sit, you'll still be liable to cling to the subtler forms even while you're working with a grosser form. So, let's say form, or let's say sounds and tactile sensations are really gross and you still cling to them during the start of your sit, let's say step 1 of Anapanasati, you'll still, if you continue to cling to these forms, you'll still be able to cling to thoughts as well. So yeah, any thoughts that are produced in response to that initial clinging. But that's just how it is. You need to let go of the grosser forms first, and only then you would be able to target the subtler forms. And that happens automatically, as we'll see. Now, the most important point, weirdly, these aggregates may be other than the five senses related one, but the more internal form of aggregates. These seem to happen in particular locations of your body. Now, I say seem because I'm not suggesting that they literally are happening in that body part, but just that the process of these aggregates taking place or their phenomena seems to be correlated to almost magically to these body parts. So, as an example, thoughts or at least mental images, so memory related stuff, seems to happen somewhere around the forehead area for me. Similarly, feelings of, let's say, sadness or even happiness seem to happen almost around the chest area for me as well. So in practice, how this works out is you start your sit and you notice that your attention or your mind is being attracted to a specific body part or a specific aggregate. Let's say at the start of your sit, it's probably the tactile sensations of breath at your nose, right? So, sort of this external touch sort of a sensation. Now, all you can do, or all you need to do, is just use mindfulness and other tools that we discussed to progressively develop enough dispassion or equanimity so that your mind lets go of clinging to this specific aggregate. Once it has done that, you automatically, and I cannot stress this enough, you automatically move to the next stage. And which means that your mind is again automatically attracted to the next aggregate or the next subtler form of location that your mind needs to work with. So you don't choose these locations, you don't choose which aggregate to work with. It sort of is laid out for you and it happens automatically, and that's what these anapanasati steps are trying to suggest. And in response to you letting go of a grosser form of aggregate, so let's say you stop clinging to the tactile sensations at your nose, a new location is chosen automatically, so you'll now start feeling your attention or your mind being really interested in the sensations of your whole body, which is a type of form. But also other symptoms that are again laid out in anapanasati start happening on its own just because you become calmer and you're now in a subtler stage. So that's really all there is to it. You don't do much other than just simply following and using those meditative tools, and in response to you just letting go of clinging to the current aggregate, the next aggregate emerges automatically. Symptoms of that step, of that level of calmness, happens automatically as well. And if you really want to detect what state you are in, you can do that. You can do that through either looking at what location your mind is clinging to right now, majorly, and also if any of those steps related to Anapanasati's 16 steps emerge. These symptoms are again correlated to these locations, so it's one and the same thing. Now, a few tips. if you want to be able to detect which step you are in, just find again the location that your mind is really interested in, or basically where your attention majorly wants to cling to. So, the location that your attention is clinging to. You can do that by A, becoming mindful, and then noticing which location or body part you automatically want to become mindful of, or what your mind is really interested in. If you're doing anapanasati or mindfulness of breathing, a good way to do that is just noticing where you feel breathing at any point of time. I guess that's why breathing is really recommended as a mindfulness object. It's really easy to detect breathing in these weird little places. So, for example, at step one, you'll probably find breathing as if it's being felt only mostly via the nose or through that tactile touch sensation. Later, you'll find it as if you're feeling it throughout your whole body or most of your body. Later, you'll find it happening as if it's happening perpendicular to your chest, so happening through your chest. That's usually how these things go, and that's correlated to these aggregate locations as well. Weirdly, towards the very end, it feels like you're breathing through your head also to a certain places. It's weird, but yeah, that's a good way to know what step you currently are in. So almost like what body part your breath is sort of intermixing with. Second, as already suggested, you don't manually choose the next location to be mindful of. It happens progressively on its own as you start letting go of previous stages. Now, this letting go almost feels like you're releasing tension from a specific body part. Yeah, that sort of releasing tension sort of emotion is pretty similar to what letting go of clinging feels like. This letting go isn't related to muscles as such, so it's not a physical thing, but it's something that just feels like you're letting go of stress or mental stress from that area. Hard to explain, but it's something that you'll need to experience for yourself. And third and finally, each time you reach a new step for the first time, so let's say you reach step 3, where you start feeling breathing in your whole body, so that's internal form that you're clinging to. Uh, it takes some time, maybe a few days or maybe at least a few hours of practice before your mind can slowly but surely become enough equanimous or dispassionate enough that it's able to let go of that new location and move on to the next step. So don't really get frustrated by the fact that you aren't able to go through all of these stages for your first time. It takes time. So each new step is at least a few days of work, depending on how long you meditate or how frequently you meditate. So I do suggest meditating really frequently, early into your like meditative career.